Yeah, we're good to go. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Okay, doesn't matter because okay. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, Asnaha. Yeah.
Yeah, we are live now. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Uh, Good evening, everyone. This is Hanu from India. So, good morning, good evening, the world in India. I'm here to take a session on learner agency, which we all are very much aware of. And can I have the second slide, please, Asnaha? Yeah. So, I'm Hanu, and I'm a PYP coordinator in GEMS Modern Academy. I'm an educator of two wonderful boys. I love to make informed risks and take informed risk and continue to evolve as a learner. I've served as coordinator in structural coach in primary years program before being appointed as deputy PYP at Pathways. And now I am a part of GEMS Modern Academy, as I just told you a little while earlier. My 13 years of enriching training of school leadership with British Council programs as British Council ambassador and mainstream education in CBSE and IB curriculum. And I'm here today to through the learner agency, which all of us are very much aware of since the time the PYP enhancements came into existence. And suddenly everyone was seen decoding, talking, learning, exploring, inquiring into learning agency. Can I have the next slide, Snaha? Thank you. So that's what we were talking about. So as we all know, learner agency is all about voice, choice, and ownership. So we have the session today just to explore and inquire, is it only about voice, choice, and ownership? Or there is much more to it than what next slide, please. Yeah. So this session, we are going to explore about agency, why, what, how. I'm a diehard fan of Sinek's Golden Circle, so I try to start every journey from why. Once that's established, we are going to interact and connect with each other after establishing why agency to what is agency exactly, what are the components of agency, and how it can be implemented in our classrooms, in our learning spaces, in our environment. There are some suggested strategies to implement agency in our classrooms. And of course, there are some exemplars which I have collected from various blogs, webinars, and various platforms, and put that knowledge at one place for everybody's gain and learning. Can we move on to next slide, please? I would like to cite the sources from where I have put this presentation together, tried to compile the learning experience together. So it's makinggoodhumans.com, which is a well-known blog, modernlearners.com, IB teacher support material. We do have TSMs on supporting agency and implementing agency in transdisciplinary learning. And then education reimagined, which is a blog again by Jennifer Devispoon. And of course, how can one cover PYP without the sketch notes of Miss Sonia? So I've used the sketch notes to delve deeper into learner. Please feel free to put your thoughts and that's the platform that we have. So let's connect and interact with each other through the chat, and I'm sure Ms. Code for the question and answer your queries. So learner agency, why? I would request Mrs. Naha to put this Mentimeter link in the chat. So before we begin with why learner agency, I would like you to use the link which is given below or the code accessmenti.com and add the code, enter the code and vote for the phrase or word that best describes why learner agency in your opinion. And we have 2 minutes for this exercise. So when you think of learner agency, I have given some options based upon my experience and my learning. So what phrase and word that best describes learner agency in your opinion? Next slide, Mrs. Naha, please. I hope everybody has been able to access the Menti meter and put their thoughts and vote for the right phrase. I would have loved to share the way the graph is emerging on my screen with you all, but because of technical issues, I'm not able to share my screen, and that is why Mrs. Naha has been very kind enough uh, to change the slides for me. But I'll definitely would like to share some data with you as the graph evolves with everybody's inputs. So we are almost there. Okay. So we are getting the graph. Please keep on accessing. According to the bar graph, according to the choices that everybody has put in, it's just taking some time to load. Please bear. Okay, I think we need to come back to it, it seems, because it's taking a little bit more time to load. Next slide, please, Mrs. Saha. So, after my research and my personal experience as an educator, there are various reasons that why one should get into or get or help nurture, cultivate agentic learners, because it cultivates partnerships, which is the most important aspect of learning in a classroom in today's time and place, where a learner becomes a collaborator rather than just a receiver. It's the transition from being a consumer to a contributor in the learning process, which gives us the ownership of our learning. It empowers, in fact, I would say, from compliance, which we have seen in our traditional way of teaching and learning. It fosters self efficacy, which is an integral part of our learning process. We move from dependent learners to self-regulated and ultimately self-directed learners. It results into deep learning, and it also shows high levels of motivation and self drive to acquire learning, because our own stake is involved in what we are learning in the classroom. That is what agency drives us towards. It communicates understanding and constructs new meanings, because we are not dependent on the traditional ways of learning and teaching, where the teacher is an all knowing entity, and we are constructing, continuously communicating our understanding, questioning, wondering, inquiring, pondering, and then constructing our meanings as per our understanding. And it also helps us learn to ask questions and express wonderings, as we just talked about a little while ago. I would like to quote, may I have the next slide, please, Mrs. Naha? Um, I would like to quote some facts which have evolved after a long research and observation by Augelia and Corso in Student Voice, the Instrument of Change in 2014. So the students who have a voice in decision making at school, they are 4 times more likely to believe teachers respect students. They think that teachers, they enjoy working with students because they are also learners along with the students, and they agree that teachers, they help them learn from their mistakes. That means it's a non-judgmental, non-assessing environment, where teacher is also a learner, and we learn from our mistakes as we go forward in our learning journey. Where the children, they feel that teachers, they encourage students to make decisions and not just command. So then those children who do not believe that students have a voice in decision making at school. So this is the factual data that I wanted to share with you all. I'll just check once again if the Mentimeter results have been uploaded. So I can yeah, so I can see that there are two people selected: nurturing self efficacy, yes; lifelong learners, empowered learners, promotes relationship and partnership. It helps manifest one's free will. We will come to this little later when and I will just leave it to your self reflection, that do you really feel that agency is all about one's free will, or it's a planned move towards development, culturing, cultivating and nurturing of the competences that one needs to develop for the future. Deep learning and understanding, yes; leaving the learner profile attributes. So almost everyone has voted for almost all the options which are there. So that shows that we are, as far as learner agency is confirmed, we all are at almost the same platform, and we have a common understanding to build our further understanding about agency. Can we have the next slide, please? So let's move on from why to learner agency what. So we all have read about it, that learner agency is all about voice, choice, and ownership. But what exactly, when we decode the voice, choice, and ownership, so what exactly we arrive at? I've tried to put together certain definitions and certain components of learner agency for a better understanding. So, according to Derek Wenmoth, whose core education 10 trends, according to him, the one way of thinking of learner agency is when the learners have the power to act. Now, this is what the core of our PYP understanding is, also is there. That whenever we have a learning experience, or whenever we always learn with the help, with some action in mind at the end. So We can connect learner agency with PYP action as well, which we will come to little bit later. When learners move from being passive recipients to being much more active in learning and actively involved in learning decisions, they have greater agency. So when they, rather than a recipient, when a learner becomes a collaborator in the learning process, when instead of consuming, learning becomes critical contributor in the learning process, that is when we have a greater agency. The educational researchers have also defined agency as the ability to exert control over and give direction to one's life. Biesta and Tedder 2007. Can we move to the next slide, please? When we think of agency, so what exactly the different terms that we use for agency? So we say that agency is engagement, agency is autonomy, agency is self-regulation, active learning, uh, transition from being passive to active in a classroom. It's all about empowerment. So I've just tried and decoded the further understanding of agency. So when we say that the learner is engaged, so what do we mean by it? We mean by it that the learner is invested in the learning task. And when is one person invested? One person is invested when you have your interest area in the learning that you are doing or in the task that you have to achieve. So that is where the genius hours, the personal inquiries, and all those things come into existence. And engagement also means where the learner is completely focused with positive emotions. That means the belief system is there. That means that the learner has the belief that yes, I can do it and I can achieve. When the learner takes the lead, becomes the driver, and starts asking questions rather than questions being asked from the learner, that is when we say that the learner is completely engaged. When it starts making connections with the real life world, when we are able to engage students where they are the drivers and they are able to connect what they have learned in the classroom with their experiences outside and make their own conclusions. That is what engagement is all about. Autonomy, it doesn't only talk about the voice choice or the free will to do whatever we need to do to learn what we are learning, but it also means where the various where a learner plays different roles in a learning community, and the capacities they it brings all the agenting capacities to a learning community, so everybody's competences is made use of. And for that we need to know our learner completely, and for that again the connection and relationships are a must. So in order to exercise agency in classrooms, we have to and we should invest time in developing those connections, those relationships with our children, and be a learner with them. Self regulation is always important in the journey of developing into an agentic learner, which also means that we need to plan and monitor the progress. That means we need to reflect and revise what we have done so far, go back to our objectives, go back to the task that we had in mind, and then reflect on it. That also means to learn from our mistakes, and and giving out this message loud and clear that there is nothing wrong in failing at a particular task, at a particular project, at a particular objective. What is more important is learning from that mistake and going ahead, moving ahead with double the confidence and belief that yes, I can do it, and taking action with others in collaborative activities. Active learning is also is about not only participating in the classroom discussions or asking questions in the class, but it also is the power to take action and make things happen as they should be. So, in my opinion, in my experience that I have seen, that learner agency is all where is it needs more of planning, it needs more of organization. The role of the facilitator takes a leap, because the facilitator becomes a learner along with the students, and prepares the goals, the targets, the objectives as per the learning styles of children. The relationships become more and more important. I'm repeating it again and again, because yes, relationships, development of relationships in a classroom with students is a must in today's time. So, learn to consolidate what we have learned so far is that learner agency is when a learner knows how he or she learns the best, is proactive, is able to set goals and action steps for future, is able to develop learning strategies and skills which will support meeting the action steps, is able to select appropriate tools and resources for each task. So the technology, the time, the team, everything has to be completely planned and provided by the facilitator. Self directs and monitors progress in learning, reflects on evidence of learning to in order to learn from the mistakes and move forward, identify one's passion and the purpose of learning, and fosters an authentic and meaningful life, as suggested by Barbara Bay, defining learner agency, who has done quite a lot of work in the field of learner agency, and she has her own blog on student agency. If we can have next slide, please. So I just have a small exercise for you, which we can complete by the end of the session. You have to demonstrate your understanding of learner agency through a medium of your choice. So here we have agency. Yes, upload your work on the Padlet link provided below by the end of the session. If I can request Miss Asnaha to kindly post the link on the chat window for the participants to access and upload their work by the end of the session. So it can be any medium that you would. It can be a simple, graphic of your understanding of learner agency, and which you can put there. It can be a graphic organizer. It can be your rough notes. It can be anything that you think will depict learner agency as per your understanding. Next slide, please. Let me just see if I'm able to put the yeah, I'm unable to, it seems. So I will request Miss Snaha to put the link, please.
Haru, I don't
Okay,
have the
let's
link.
move on
I
from
don't
what
have the link.
and
I cannot access the link. I have the Mentimeter links, but not the Padlet one.
okay, it's in the okay. I'll just try and share in the file earlier. So I'll do that in just a minute. So let's move from what and why to how, which is I think is the most important part of learner agency. So how do we implement agency in classroom? I'm sure everybody would be using agency, the how, why, the implementation of agency in different ways. I'm so sorry. Just excuse me for a second. Mrs. Naha, I've already posted the Padlet link. If you can share, please.
Yes, I got it. I'm just sharing in a while.
Yeah. Okay. So I can't move forward without taking the support from the sketch note of Miss Sonia, who developed this sketch note in 2017 when we started getting PYP enhancements at that time. The agency, so she's broken down, she's further decoded that what exactly we understand by voice, choice and ownership in a classroom. So when we talk about voice, so who does the listening in the class? How are decisions made? Do all students have a chance to speak in their mother tongue? So all these questions that we have been reading and studying, and they have become a kind of checklist for me, at least as a teacher, as a facilitator, as a learner along with the students, to see that how am I implementing agency in my classroom, or as a trainer, how am I training my teachers to use agency in their classroom. So if I talk about the choice, so who sets up the learning spaces in the class? Are all students doing the same thing at the same time, or there are different, or we are customizing our learning experiences, we are making some plans to engage children the way they are supposed to based on their learning styles? Can students choose where they work, or we tell them, okay, you go and sit with that pair and do your work? So these are some self reflective questions that we should have handy with us, to ensure that how agentic our learning spaces are. If I can have the next slide, please, Mrs. Naha. So during my research, I came across this very beautiful graphic which talked about the components of agency and the key vocabulary associated with this development, which I think would really be great for the teachers who are new to the term of agency, and they are not aware from where to begin. So this gives a kind of framework where we start, we break down further, decode the voice, choice and ownership, the three words so fondly and so frequently associated with agency, with uh, with their further division, scaffolded version of it. So when we have divided according to this blog, which was written by this article, which was written by Jennifer Davis Poon, who is a part of Center for Innovation in Education, says that we can create agentic environments when we start. The first thing that we do in any setup is we start with advantages goals, which are the backbone of every agentic experience that has to happen, because the children have to identify what they learn, because they are at the core of learning process. So the sub concepts which are associated with goal setting are awareness, our forethought, is intentionality, means whether, yeah, I have written a goal, but do I have the intention to achieve that goal or not? Planful competence. So I would just want those teachers to reflect where they've just voted for free mind to do whatever the child wants to. No, the role of, so I would just like to correct this here, that the role of the facilitator becomes too responsible and accountable, because it has to be, in spite of the fact that we are exploring the interest of the children, we are propagating personal inquiries, what the children want to learn, but still it has to be a planful competence that needs to be implemented. Once the goals are being set have been set, then we initiate action towards those goals. So there comes the choice, the voice, the free will, the freedom, the autonomy, the regulative causality, the self influence, the proactiveness, the self initiative initiation attitude, and accountability and ownership of one's learning experience. Once we have initiated the action, it's all the way important to reflect and revise what have we been doing in the past, where are we now, and where do we intend to go? Do we need to revisit what we had made earlier? Was it too ambitious? Was it not? How do we need to to assess ourselves, where should the control come, have we digressed from the goal that we made. So in order to nurture self regulated learners, it's very important to reflect at each and every step, going back and coming forward to develop perseverance and grit to achieve what we want to, and to learn from our mistakes as well. A very important aspect which I really would want to mention here is internalized self efficacy, which is a part of our PYP pillar, the learner, under student agency. We are talking about, we are implementing self efficacy as well. So, if I decode and take a few minutes to talk about self efficacy, it's all about growth mindset, it's about internal locus of control, it's about empowerment, and it's about self efficacy. I would want to draw your attention from the word empowerment to enabling. There is not much of a difference, but according to my research, the question that has come to the fore is, which I've asked myself also, that empowerment, when we say that I'm empowering the learners, I'm actually putting the learner in a hierarchy of giving something. But agency is something which you are born with. As a baby, you are an agentic learner. Nobody has to tell you, has to guide the baby, that how to explore, how to inquire, how to know your environment, when to speak, when to start walking. It's the child's own mindset and own, I would say, initiative, the capacity to take risks when the toddler starts learning and starts implementing. So enabling is the word that I would want to draw your attention to. Mrs. Naha, if we can have the next slide, please. So when we talk about supporting self-efficacy and growth mindset in classrooms, so I found a very interesting quote here, which I would just like to share with you all. Learning is not just about getting the right answer. When we talk about learner agency, when we talk about agentic learners, it's also about understanding how to get the right answer. So, how is, if not more, but as important as getting the right answer over there? So, as how can we develop this growth mindset and self efficacy in classrooms? We as educator need to give time to think and apply problem solving tools. Don't pitch in as soon as you have given a problem and you felt that the children are struggling, they're finding it challenging, and we tend to just jump into it and help out. Okay, let me give you, let me guide you. No, let the children have the time to think about the problem they are resolving, to think about the task they are about to accomplish, and to apply their own problem solving understanding tools that they have in their own kitty to start thinking and resolving that task. The other way of developing self efficacy and growth mindset is frequent formative assessments. Because with these assessments, we are actually nurturing the risk taking among the learners. Because we are giving them a message that there is no need to be scared of any kind of failure. Failure is a learning experience, and all the assessments are basically to inform the planning for further learning, to learn from our mistakes and plan better. Taking new initiatives, steps, methodology in the class to role model risk taking. So, as the facilitator, as the learner in the class, we need to be in that mode of learners ourselves, who is not who are not scared to fail. That, I'm using a new strategy in the class, I'm using a new VTR in the visible thinking routine in the class, I have all of a sudden used a new methodology in the class. So if it did not work, I should, as a teacher, as a facilitator, I should be able to role model that risk taking is informed, risk taking is perfectly fine, and there is no fear or scare of failing at a particular task. Okay, this did not work, Let me look at what did not work so that I can learn from that and move forward. Use positive language that evokes further inquiry and inspires the learners in place of negative and self deprecating statements. Consistent reflections to learn from one's mistake is very important, because that converts the failures into learning opportunities. If I can have the next slide, please. So, honestly, when we talk about agency and we talk about so many things in totality, there are some barriers to agency in learning which have been identified by Alfie Kohn, who is a renowned educationist and a researcher. So, according to Alfie, the barriers to agency are three, which, as educator and being a part of a system, we all face at different times. So they can be structural, they can be teacher based barriers, they can be student based barriers. So the structural are the mandates that we have, the schedules that we have, the so called curriculum standards that we have, which we have to meet, and the classroom management, the resources that we have. These all pose a barrier to implementing agency in classrooms. With respect to the teacher, sometimes being a teacher and being because we have learned from the traditional way of learning and teaching, we are very uncomfortable in relinquishing our authority in the class, because that is how we have grown and learned in the past, and we see ourselves as the keepers of content, and we desire compliance. So student agency is somewhere, where it's the compliance is in one direction and empowerment engagement is in the other. And student agency, it's a continuous tussle between the compliance and the engagement, and too much work to change. Obviously, as a teacher, one has to plan, one has to build relationship with the students, one has to create connect, one has to help facilitate learning in the classroom as per the learning interests of the students. So yes, it is too much work to change, so that is another barrier. Sometimes the learner himself is not ready to take ownership or initiative. That is what has been put under student barrier towards learner agency, where the student wants the teacher to do all the work and doesn't want to own up the learning, doesn't want to be proactive, doesn't want to think, and just want to complete the work that is required to get good grades. So these are certain barriers that I'm sure many of us would have felt in our learning environment as well, in our teaching experience as well. uh, Next slide, please. So quickly, 2-3 minutes, I'm going to share another mentimeter with you, which is I just want to understand that what are the different uh, barriers that you encounter while implementing agency um, in your environment as such. So we will just, it's just a 2 minute. I'm just sharing the Mentimeter link with Mrs. Naha so that she can put it in the chat. And I'm sure you would have been able to access the Padlet as well. Yeah. So in this Mentimeter, I would just want you to enlist the barriers that you have faced as an educator, as the implementer of student agency in your classroom, and that has really made you think and made you wonder that why in the classroom, or has wavered your belief system, has wavered your um, thinking, has distracted you basically. So I've just posted the link in the chat, Mrs. Naha. Yeah, if you can just post it in the chat. So we'll just wait for 2 minutes to get some responses from you all. And those of you, I think it's taking some time for the chat. So you have the slide in front of you. You can visit menti.com and add the code to vote, to make your to enlist the barriers that you have faced as the implementer of learner agency in your environment. I can see that the bar graph is also getting filled more, and people are still posting. That's nice to see. Yeah. So I would like to share the conclusion of barriers as well, and I wish I could show you, but you all have the Padlet link with you. So after this session, I'll definitely post the collage as well as the bar in the Padlet link for you all to see. So the results are being loaded, and I'm sure everybody would be enlisting at the moment. So let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide. So there are some myths also as compared. There are some myths about learner agency that as a teacher, establishing control in the class is very important. We feel at times that I need to have that control in the class, otherwise I will not be respected. It's a myth. The reality is that if we are a part of the learning process along with the students, we earn the respect. And it is said that you can't command respect, you have to earn it. And if the learners are involved in the classroom and school decision making from the start, you will have more authority as compared to the dictatorial authority that we talk about. If students are in charge, we will run out of time to cover required content. So this is the covered curricula will be replaced by true explorations and deep learning. For that, the environment that you are working in need to support what you want to do in the class and give you that flexibility as a facilitator, as a teacher, to implement agency. I can empower my students to be agents of learning. So here, the again going back to the same discussion, that empowering is one aspect of it. It's not empower. Nobody can empower, because agency is not doesn't belong to anyone to be given. It is there. It needs to be nurtured and cultivated to have deeper learning experiences. If we can have next slide. So this is again, I'm going back to the sketch notes created by Miss Sonia. This is learner agency in PYP. So learner agency has been an integral part of primary years program since the time enhancements came into existence. And we value agency in classrooms where, because we talk about assessment capable learners and natural inquirers in the class. We talk about students being having the or demonstrating self efficacy in achieving their objectives. So all members of the learning community are encouraged to reflect on how their decisions have supported student agency. So we can support student agency in our classrooms by not having structured time in the classrooms, by giving them uh, by revisiting ideas whenever the children need to revisit and not run with the content. How can we do less to make time for more? So time is an integral part of integral, I would say, a component of how we can implement agency in the classrooms. Relationships, as I've been saying since the very beginning of this session, that relationships are a must. Do we feel that all the people in the room are learners? How do they support each other? So it's not only relationship between the facilitator and the students, it's the three-way triangular relationship that I'm talking about, and parents are also a part of it. So all the stakeholders, how are they connected with each other? How are they interacting with each other? Who is talking how much in the class? Who is listening? How decisions are being made? How are learners being grouped? All of these things, they foster agency in PYP classrooms. The spaces, who is planning those spaces? Who is taking and does the learning spaces give the learners enough scope to reflect and value what they are learning? Does it evoke ownership by the learners? The kind of materials that we have in class. So these all things, they foster student agency in PYP. Uh, the next very important part that I wanted to, the next slide, please, Mrs. Na, is that learner agency is built into our ATLs. If you look at the ATLs closely, whether it is information literacy, its transfer, its collaboration, its communication, its reflection, thinking, which are a part of different main ATLs. These are the sub skills, and under that, the sub strands which are there, they foster agency in totality. For example, in collaboration, working in groups, accepting others, personal challenges, in reflection, self evaluation, thinking, creating novel solutions, identifying problems. All these sub strands, the strands under the sub skills, they put the learner in the driving seat. So they are in complete support of the learner agency in the classroom. When we talk about the next slide, Mrs. Nah, when we talk about learner agency, so the what we have learned so far, that it emerges from within. It cannot be given. It is no one's to be given away. It emerges from within. It has to be genuine. We cannot have pseudo choices in the class. By pseudo choices, I mean, which I'll just cover in my next slide. By pseudo choices, I mean where the adult has already predetermined that this is what the children are going to do, in spite of the fact that those choices have been given to the students. So it has to be genuine. It is not a check. It's not a check box to just check off the list. It requires no rubrics or framework or checklist. It is just cultivated and nurtured in a classrooms, and it can be nurtured with respect to nurtured by providing or by facilitating learning of all the students, and not only certain or not only a few in the class. So a true agentic environment would be where all kinds of learners at different levels have the flexibility, the voice, choice, and ownership to learn and grow as individuals. As I said earlier, the PYP action and learner agency are completely hand in glove together, because we talk about action in our PYP classrooms, which is considered a dynamic outcome of agency. Whether we talk about social justice, we talk about social entrepreneurship, we talk about lifestyle choices, or participation or advocacy, everything revolves around the kind of agentic experiences that we have had in the classroom. The next slide, please. So the first steps that may that we can start our journey towards agentic learning is: number one is providing more choices, which I'm sure many of us would already be doing. We give them choices. We give choices to students with respect to the project work that they are doing, with respect to the demonstration of learning, with respect to pursuing their personal inquiries, passions, by setting custom learning paths. So it's the children who set their goals. It's children who can have their own schedules according to their learning journey. With increased dialogue about learning and agency dispositions, and moving to inquiry approach, which we already have, and project based learning that we have. But we need to use care about the pseudo choices, as I was saying little while earlier, that pseudo choices are the choices where the outcomes are predetermined by adults. And uh, I leave it to your for you to ponder and reflect on your practices, that what kind of choices have you been implementing in the classroom as the okay. So I'm so sorry for abruptly, just taking out a second. I wanted to share the word cloud regarding the barriers to uh, learner agency. So the biggest barriers is time constraint, and then followed by compliance, lack resources, mindset fixations, and SEN students, competence inadequacy, technical skills, rigid curriculum. So all of these are, so we as the educators have to find. I will be I'm sorry, I will be posting this collage as well as the videos. These are the challenges, the barriers which we have to, as educators, be problem solvers and find a solution around them. This is the time to reflect a bit. May I have the next slide, please? So, who owns the learning in your class? Kindly take a few seconds, I would say, not minutes, because we are running short of time, to reflect on your practices and use the chat to share which stage of participation you are at. So, this is Roger Hart's ladder of young people's participation. So, reflect back, think of your classroom, think of yourself as an educator. So, which stage are you in? It starts with voice, going on to participation, engagement, ownership, agency. So, where do you see yourself in the continuum of implementer of learning agency? And I'll move forward. The food for thought with which, before I share the exemplars with you, the strategies with you, that how you can implement agency in the classroom. The food for thought for you all is that, are you exercising agency as the educators, as the facilitators in your professional learning? If you are a member of the leadership team, so are you giving that flexibility to your teachers as well? Because when the teachers have agency, that is when they are able to nurture that agency in their students. Have you made your environment agency ready for everyone to exercise that with responsibility and accountability and ownership? Have you Are you a collaborator? Are you exercising agency in collaborative efforts? And are you exercising agency in assessing student progress? The next slide, please. So these are some sample strategies for voice which I've taken from a presentation on agency, the resources on agency put together by, I think, Making Good Humans, Studio 5, and all those blogs and platforms that we have. So when we talk about voice, the first place from where we can talk about voice is giving space for students to voice their honest opinions about learning. So, do we have those reflection boards in our classrooms for students to voice out their opinions? Do we take feed forward from our students that how was today's lesson and what else would they want to learn? Place and process for students to voice problems, questions, ideas about the class and community. Have we asked children that, okay, we are going to start with this topic today or with this concept today? How do you think would you want to learn? So all these kinds of questions where the student's voice can be considered, the space for needs, worries, excitements, and suggestions. Have we asked the students and parents that what do they think about have about the way the school activities are happening, or there is any input, the feed forward which we do take as a part of after the PTCs or the student led conferences or the exhibitions, and every parent interaction, um, and report cards, student feedback forms. So these are the various where do we give voice to students to add their own bit in their own report cards. Do we allow them to self assess themselves on their report cards? The next few strategies are with respect to choice. So, helping students understand themselves as learners to be able to make choices. Choice for where they learn and with whom do they want to learn. So, we all started with choice boards. We all started with choice of how you want to express your learning. We all started with peer assessment and peer feed forward expert boards. But have we reach that state of agency where the child has the learner has the agency to decide whether he wants to be part of the reading program or participate in the assembly, or wants to have optional teacher lessons? Maybe the learner wants to be in to focus more on math and not on language. But have we reached that stage? So that is something that we need to ponder upon and see how flexible and adaptable we can become in getting student agency in our classrooms. For ownership, students setting up the classroom learning spaces, which is the most common one, which all of us would have exercised some way, somewhere, sometime. The students, they make essential agreements for their class routines, for their class behavior. They co-construct procedures and routines in the class. Do we involve them that when you come to the report to the class in the morning, how should your behavior be, what you should be doing? And then the personal learning plans, the student plan units, making space for student initiatives. So all these strategies can really help us reflect on what uh, are we doing as the implementers of student agency, and how we are going to ensure that we are able to nurture the agentic environment in our learning spaces, whether it is to do with the teachers or with the students or with the parents, with the constraints, with the barriers that we have, and with the resources that we have. So that is the end of my presentation. So I know we are left with only 2-3 minutes, but if there are any questions, Mrs. Naha, your comments, your questions, if we can have that. Mrs. Naha, are you there?
Hi Hanu, I'm there. Thank you so much for presenting such an enthralling session on the topic what, why, and how of agency. I can't see any questions as of now. Do you have some comments? Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, the network is too bad over here. So thank you so much. And from all of us, there is a small token of appreciation for you. Please accept this certificate on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here and taking out the time. And I'm sure we all are in the learning journey, and it's consistent and never ending process. Thank you for being here.
Can you hear me? Am I audible? It's a struggle to connect. I don't know. Am I audible, Miss Hanu?
Yes, yes, you are Mrs. Now. Just now. I
Okay.
was frozen earlier.
Okay. I think yeah, yeah, yeah. So people are appreciating. We have Diana. She is appreciating your session. Thank you so much, Diana, for your appreciation. Yes, it was indeed a wonderful session, and we could see some of the very practical strategies that can be used immediately in the classroom to enhance agency, and we all are too excited to implement agency. And thank you so much, Hanu. We'll
Thank you.
soon collaborate again. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye. See
Thank
you
you,
next
everyone.
week. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.